Time is now 5 p.m. I call this meeting of the Granbury Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members that the meeting has been duly called and the notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance Texas Government Code Chapter 551. At this time, we will go into closed session according to Section 551074 to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, and reassignment of public office or employee, and Section 551076 deliberations regarding security devices or audits, and Section 551072 purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. The time is 5:01. The time is now 6:04. We are out of executive session, and we're going to take a 10-minute break. It's now 6:09. We are going to reconvene in open meeting. At this time, I've asked Barbara Townsend to open us with invocation.
Please bow your head with me. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here this evening. Lord, we ask you to give us the wisdom to know what is best for these children. We know that they are so precious in your sight, every single one of them. Father, and you know what we need to do. May we listen to you in the direction we should go in each one of the actions that we take. Lord, help us to remember to love each other and to show respect for each other, both those of us on the board and those of us in the audience. And to also remember that for when we are out and about in the community. Father, I also ask you to protect each and every person as they go about their summer. May they have joyful times with their families, and may they be able to come back ready to go back to school come August. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Hudson Henry, welcome, young man. He will lead us in the pledges. Would you please stand?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
And the mother is standing there. You want to wave us, Mom? And this young man is here tonight from STEAM Academy. We'll go now to Dr. Glenn in your superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President and trustees. First, we haven't been together since we graduated kids at the high school and at STARS, and I do want to give a special shout out. I know we have principals in the audience watching online and a lot of staff that worked at graduation, and both the STARS graduation and GHS, very different graduations, but we're proud of all of those kids. Look forward to the great things that the class of 2023 will be doing in GHS, or I'm sorry, as they move on from GHS and from STARS. As soon as we wrapped up graduation, we jumped right into summer school. I got the report today, enrollment at 315. So a lot of kids jumping into summer school. Great opportunity. I want to thank, I see Stacy Brown, our curriculum director, Shelley Kurtzinger, our SPED director, and then our assistant director of curriculum, Carla Wilmuth in the audience, and then also we know we have Jimmy Heffernan and Jessica Johnson running summer school. The entire summer school staff, we appreciate them giving up their time, their valuable time over the summer to come back and work with our kids. In addition to that, I had the opportunity to visit with a few coaches. Last week we had sports camps, over 200 kids coming to GHS every day for a variety of sports, everything from soccer to football to volleyball to basketball camps. And in this week, we opened up strength and conditioning. So if you got kids at school, if they're watching online, we know that we want everyone to know that the GHS remains open. GISD remains open during the summer, and we encourage you to bring your kids up here, and we'll continue to pour into them. Our child nutrition program continues to operate during the summer, and so if kids are looking for a healthy breakfast and lunch, bring them up here for that meal as well. And just a shout out to all of our educators who make the summer education program possible. And then finally, just an update on strategic planning. We have moved through the G2020 plan, which started under Dr. Largent's leadership, and we are wrapping up G2025 and already beginning the next phase as we look to right at what predictions are showing to be 10,000 students in Granbury ISD right around the corner. And so if the demographic study holds accurate like it has in the past, by 2029 we'll be at 10,000 kids in this district. And so we're grateful to the educators, the community members, the parents, and the trustees who have all rallied together to put together a plan to help this district move forward with our city and county. And we look forward to presenting that plan at our July meeting. So if you have the opportunity, we want to encourage you to be here or to watch online as we unveil some of the really, really cool things, the innovative things that have come up in these community meetings that we're going to be putting in place for this district. And then finally, if you have an opportunity tonight, I promised the mayor I would say this, but there is a meeting on 377. And for all of us who live in Granbury, we know that traffic can be a nightmare to deal with. I'm not so sure construction on 377 will be easier to deal with, but we have great partners at the city and the county level. If you get the opportunity when we close out tonight, I would encourage you to go to that meeting, which I believe is happening at the convention center. So with that, Madam President, that's a report for June.
Thank you, Dr. Glenn. At this time, we go to the open forum. Each of you will be given 3 minutes, and we will begin with Mr. Greg Harrell, who wants to speak on the consent agenda 9F, which is communities in schools. Thank you.
The communities in school thing. So when I saw this on the agenda, and pardon me, good evening, trustees, Madam President, Dr. Glenn. Thanks for allowing me to speak once again. When I saw this item on the agenda, I immediately wanted to understand what communities in schools actually is and what they do. I would submit to you that it's somewhat of a misnomer as I went out to the website, because I feel like the people that come to these meetings and pay attention to what's going on in the schools are the community, this community in schools. But what I saw on the website at the CIS address, apparently, when you look at all of the words that are there, it just appears as if it's a bunch of erstwhile people, and there's a lot of good things there. There's a lot of good words there. But like in so many cases, what you have to do is you have to kind of sift through some of the words that are there, and I feel like in this environment in which we all live, where there's so much gaslighting going on, that you really have to kind of get down to it and look and see what it actually means. One of the things that jumped out, well, actually two of the things that jumped out at me as I visited the website was the emphasis on DEI at the CIS website, and also emphasis on social and emotional learning. And it looks as if that is part of the core of what they bring into the schools. So that concerns me. So I wanted to actually even dig a little bit deeper and understand what social and emotional learning looks like. And I went to the Harvard website. SEL was actually developed in the 90s to help kids really kind of cope with some of the relational issues that they were having at that time. I would say over the course of the 30 years since it was developed, we can look back, and if we are looking at outcomes, we can say SEL has probably been a massive failure. So much so that the state of Florida has absolutely banned SEL from its public schools. Idaho is fighting SEL in a big way. So I would ask that you not consider spending the money on this program and instead use those funds to place additional teachers in schools and help our kids. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Braden Chasteen to speak to communities and schools.
Can y'all hear me? Okay. Hello. Sorry about the notes. I blank out when I get nervous, so notes will benefit everyone this evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to speak about an organization that is very dear to my heart. My name is Braden Chasteen. I'm a 2009 Granbury High School graduate, a certified special education teacher, and in less than 2 months, I will have my master's degree in social work from Tarleton State. I went back to get my master's in social work with a dream of being a school social worker. When I had to choose where I would complete my second internship, my first and only choice was communities and schools, or as we say, CIS. The first time I heard about CIS was from Chief Programs Officer Lauren Sly. Mrs. Sly spoke with pride about the organization, the employees, and most importantly, the students CIS has had the privilege in working with over the years. I just completed my internship in April in another district at a Title I school. The program manager at that school spent every single day working to ensure that students and their families felt important, loved, and that she was there if they needed anything, whether the need was a Band-Aid or helping a family experiencing homelessness. Every day I was at that school was a blessing, and I was able to witness the true sense of what it is to be a part of CIS. And just in case you have never been able to witness the work they do firsthand, I will tell you a little bit about it. Being a program manager is helping students and families ensure they have enough food because kids cannot learn if they are hungry. It's connecting families to housing resources because kids struggle to concentrate if they don't know where they will lay their head at night. It's walking students through grief as you cannot learn when you are heartbroken. It's assisting a single mom trying to raise her kids alone, but her electricity has been shut off and food is scarce. It's supporting a single dad whose child has been expelled because of their behavior. It's connecting students and families to counseling that will address their trauma because when you are having flashbacks, again, you cannot learn. It's knocking on a door of students across the street to ensure those kids get to school because their mom will be issued a truancy notice if they have any more absences, yet she is at work trying to provide for them. It's teaching a student to manage their test anxiety because they immediately start crying when the STAR test is placed in front of them. As an intern with CIS, I helped run groups with students where we talked about topics such as being kind, self-esteem, following rules, and how to help with test anxiety, all topics that anyone at any age could benefit from. The CIS program managers not only support students and families, but also teachers. Teachers have so much on their plate and feel pressure from so many different angles, they don't have time to connect families with basic needs assistance. What CIS provides for students and families is support, consistency, safety, and love. They are an invaluable resource that any school district would be lucky to have. I'm proud to have them supporting students in my hometown, and I hope they are utilized for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chastain. Carolyn Green on the MOU.
Thank you, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Glenn. I hear a lot of talk about how poor children have all these disabilities and are worried about food and can't move forward. Well, I grew up cash poor. My parents were farmers, and sometimes we didn't have food at that point. But I never wanted a handout from anyone. My parents supported us the best they could. There was 7 children. My mother was from Mexico, so you know, I kind of get insulted that we're using food as a disability. And going back to this critical race theory, and the diversity, inclusion, and equity that teaches racism. I feel it teaches racism against me, and that, there's no equity or diversity up here that I can see right now. So maybe we need to take a look at that and not brainwash our kids into thinking that they need to be racist by this program. And as far as teaching our children that they can identify with anything, being a boy or girl, and that's okay, it'd be like me saying I identified as a board of trustee and I can just go up there and be one. It's teaching mental disability, mental health issues. I worked along CPS and had a lot of people in the Child Protective Services, social workers, make mistakes. And sometimes they don't do it for the wrong reasons, but maybe they don't know better. And for this to be brought into our schools and have a stranger look at our child and decide if they're mentally challenged or if they need something, and not have the parents first bring it, be identified with it. We know our children better than anyone else, and we will do anything for our children. So for the school to want to try and take over that position, I am offended. It also teaches shame, that if a child is white, they should be ashamed of themselves. That breaks down their self-esteem. And so I did have a teacher ask my child if she was ashamed that she was white. Well, my child her race is Hispanic. But to ask that of my child and of a group of children that are white, that's just shaming them. It's tearing down their self-esteem, and that's not the school's for. It's to build them up. And I know there's a lot of good teachers, and I know they're being pressured to do these programs, and I don't want these programs in there pressuring good teachers to teach bad things. It's hard enough right now with the COVID and everything else. So please, rethink this. The community schools, that is actually, the president is out of San Antonio, and he's backed by George Soros and Hillary Clinton and Act Blue. So think of those and do your research. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Monica Brown, speaking on CIS.
Thank you for having me, and good evening. I'm going to need to give something to Dr. Glenn in just a minute. Just some papers, yeah. Be just a second. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling my best. I haven't for 2 days, but I'm totally against this. I just want you to know, as a community member, and I do care about the children as well. I kind of got drug into y'all's life, and I could be anywhere but here right now, and it would be fun for me. Anywhere. Communities Resource Guide. If you haven't looked it up, you can go to their website, Granburyans. I guess that's what you call yourselves. That's what I am now. Go to the Resource Guide and go in it and click through. Anywhere you see dark black, click through. You will see examples of how they are going to rework the vocabulary of your children. You need to double check this and research it, just like what she just said. Do your research. So, this one, I wanted Dr. Glenn to have this, and I hope somebody will make photocopies for all of you, including everybody, you guys on the edges here too. I think Leah Dawson needs a copy as well. Gender transition surgery, dreams turn to nightmares. And here's one more, exposing the gender lie. I would like to give these to you because I'm not sure you're aware of what a gender transition surgery can mean to a young person who has no idea what you're encouraging them to do. And the reason I mentioned Leah is because when we were asked to research books, we researched them. And the I Am Jazz book glamorizes turning yourself from a boy into a girl, turns him into a beautiful girl. Y'all need to read that. The actual day-to-day life of a transgender person, an average one. It is not at all a good situation. It's very complicated. It's extremely painful in more ways than one. It is not kind. And then I wanted to encourage you to go back to EHAA and do what you're accredited to do. Look at history, look at tradition. I looked in your library again this week just as an interest. If I wanted to search for Frederick Douglass, does anybody know who he is? Okay, he's not there. Daniel Boone isn't there. Look up Texas history, you won't find it. Look up your famous Americans, you won't find them. I'm pretty sure Helen Keller wasn't in there. Now, I did find Anne Frank. And then I'm going to beg you to stop the graphic novels for a while until you give these kids a good library. A library that will inspire them. It'll show them how someone came up from slavery. Where's that book? Booker T. Washington. Why isn't his voice being heard? Maybe we should ask ourselves those questions. And whose children are they? And what are you doing? And if you'd go back to your code of conduct, which is exactly what Carroll ISD came down to the conclusion, you would have a far better system and you wouldn't need all these groups and programs to come in so you can try to fix what isn't being done in the first place. You have a great code of conduct.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Erica Schatt.
Good evening. First, it doesn't look like it, but it is pronounced Scott. No, you would have never guessed it. It's always a thing.
Scott,
Yes.
S-C-H-A-T. Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
I got you, maybe next time. Thank you.
I am a program manager for communities and schools at Bacchus Elementary here in Granbury ISD. I have lived in Granbury my entire life, so I was really excited for the opportunity to work in the community that I grew up in. Kind of my day-to-day kind of involves being at school early, ready and happy to work with other people as we open doors for kids. I talk to them, I talk to their parents, then we go into school. I usually see around 80 kids a week. We have lunch groups. We talk about, really, I just ask them about their days, about their lives. They talk to me about what they may need. And when they tell me that they have a need, I contact their parents. But even before that, before they even come into my room, if they have any sort of interest, I get a parental consent form. So any kids that I see, they have been given permission from their parents to see me. But when they are in my room, our big thing is highlights and lowlights. They tell me about a highlight of their week and then something that's like a lowlight. Most of the time, they don't have lowlights and they aren't required to have them, but I do allow them the opportunity. That's sort of my basic day-to-day. I have 3 of those groups each day, but the things beyond that I do are connect families with resources. I help parents fill out benefit forms. I talk to parents about what resources in the community they may need. In the month of May alone, I drove over 250 miles to provide transportation to kids. And I know that I've made good connections with people in the community through the job that I've gotten to do here. I enjoy working with the Hood County Children's Charity Fund. I have a good relationship with our Salvation Army. I run our clothing closet at our specific school, which is set up by the Hood County Children's Charity Fund. We also have a shoe closet where I can provide shoes to kids. That's kind of the things that I do. And I talk to parents a lot. So I just want that to be known. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ted Lovato.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here this evening. My name's Ted Lovato. I live in Granbury. I'm a licensed master social worker here in the state of Texas, and I've been active in the North Texas community for over 40 years in the social service area. I'm here this evening in support of Communities in Schools. Communities in Schools is a national organization that brings vital supportive services to children in school districts in the Fort Worth and surrounding communities. This includes our wonderful town of Granbury, Texas. These services include an array of opportunities that help to combat such things as bullying, mental health issues, educational learning obstacles, and hunger. Because of my close working relationships with communities and schools, I know that they employ several full-time licensed experienced social workers at the elementary, middle, and high school levels with required parental consent. These professionals provide case management to the students to help them maneuver everyday situations that they must face at school each day. They work in tandem with a team of professionals at the schools to provide the necessary services to meet the children's basic needs like food, shelter, transportation, and family referrals for other services. The CIS workers also serve as extra personnel to assist the school staff in daily activities and in cases of emergencies. The trusting relationships that children build with their social workers are an important component excuse me, to the well-being and to their self-esteem. The parents also benefit from the services and the relationships as the social workers can help them resolve and make referrals for things such as rental assistance, food pantries, mental health counseling, and other community support services. I wholeheartedly support communities and schools and the services that they provide, and I encourage the Granbury Independent School District to continue to support them as well. But most of all, to support the children that so desperately need an extra bit of help from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The additional folks who have signed up to speak in open forum will be heard at the end of the meeting, as they are not addressing items on the agenda. And we listen to those of you who are addressing items on the agenda so that we will have your input before we actually vote on the agenda items. Having said that, we will go to the consent agenda. Oh, no, we'll go first to consider action on items discussed in closed session. The first item is the action on the superintendent's contract. Do I have a motion regarding the superintendent's contract?
Madam President, I move that we accept the superintendent's contract as discussed in closed session.
Would you like to specify? Extend it 1 year?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
I will second that.
Any discussion? All in favor of the extension of the superintendent's contract for a year? Show of hands. Opposed, same sign. Let the record show 5-2 vote. Consider staff recommendations. Dr. Glenn.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, trustees. You have before you the staff recommendations. I want to thank Wes Jones again and his staff for putting these together. In your packet, you'll find the resignations as well as the retirements and appointments for all of our campuses in the district. It is our recommendation that you approve as presented.
Madam President, I move that we accept the staff recommendations as was posted.
And I'll second.
I have a motion by Ms. Townsend, a second by Mr. Moore to approve the staff recommendations. Are there any discussions? All in favor of approving the staff regulations as presented, show of hands. Let the record show 7-0 that we have approved those.
Thank you, Madam President. The last item discussed in closed session does not require action, but I want to make the community aware that we did have two security audits at the end of the school year. The first was at Backus Elementary School, and the second was at Granbury High School. I want to congratulate our security team. We had 9 audits in total, and the district passed every one of them with a perfect record. So shout out to Chief Clark and his team, also John Mueller, who's with us tonight. You and your staff did an exceptional job. Also our campus administrators, teachers. It really is a collaborative effort, and we are grateful for the work you did this year, and certainly proud to close out the final 2 audits successfully. Madam President, that's all we have as it relates to the closed session action items.
Now we'll move to consent agenda items. Does anyone want to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to remove F and G for discussion.
And I would like to remove H for discussion.
Okay, so we're going to move F and G and H. Do I have a motion regarding consent agenda items? Approve the minutes. First, review of TASB local policy update. Consider moving August 28th board meeting to August 21st. Consider GHS out-of-state travel request. Consider MOU Upbring Head Start. Consider 23-24 salary schedules. Consider staff development waiver for 23-24 school year. Consider peak certification form.
So moved.
Have a motion from Ms. Gore.
Second.
Second from Mr. Wimberly. Is there any discussion? All in favor of approval of those specific items, show of hands. Opposed, same sign. Let the record show 7-0. Let's take up 9F, consider MOU with communities and schools.
Yes, I have several questions. Who would you like me to direct them to?
Direct them to Dr. Glenn. If he can't answer them, he'll get somebody that can.
All right. First of all, we had, I guess this one lady said she was the program director. Who are the program directors for the schools?
I've invited the Miss Garner up here. She is from Community and Schools in Greater Fort Worth, and she is our contact for this. The person who said that they were program manager was a program manager for Bacchus. So
Bacchus.
Lauren is here, and she can answer some questions. But we can go through them, and then she can probably answer them all at once, maybe.
Lauren, would you like to come to the podium in case we have any questions?
Or Lindsay, sorry, Lindsay.
Lindsay.
My fault.
Mrs. Clark, on your summary on page 105, you defined a few years. How many years have we been doing CIS? And for
I
only
believe 5 years.
And is it only for those 3 schools that we've been doing it for 5 years?
So there was a time that we did not do it at GMS. So there was a hiatus of 2 years at GMS that we did not have a program manager. But last year we added the program manager back at GMS, and we also added a mental health counselor at the high school to help our LPC.
And on page 103, item 3, parental consent, how are we obtaining that consent?
I'll go ahead and let Ms. Garner talk about that.
I'd like to start, if you don't mind, by introducing myself. And first of all, thank you, Dr. Glenn, Dr. Harrington, and the board for allowing me to be able to come here and have the opportunity to address some of your questions. I'm Lindsay Garner. We do actually have our Chief Programs Officer here, Lauren Sly. So you can see that those are easily mixed up. But I'm Lindsay Garner, President and CEO of Communities and Schools, Greater Tarrant County, and I'm also a very proud alumni of Granbury ISD. So I went to Oakwoods Intermediate, Meadows Middle, when that was a thing, and graduated Granbury High School class of 2000. So I mention that to say I am deeply, deeply committed to this community. I'm a product of this community. And it's been a great honor and a privilege to be able to bring services and supports from the organization I represent to the students and families here. It's been very dear to my heart, and I consider it a great, great honor. To answer your question about parental consent, So every student that is enrolled in CIS, either the case management program or the mental health counseling program, must obtain parental consent before they are enrolled. And that is a statewide standard for all of our communities and schools programs. It's a national standard, but we also have a very strong presence in the state. There are 27 affiliates just in the state of Texas. We can obtain that either by electronic consent form that the parents are able to sign that way, or if needed, we can send home a paper form, but that is a requirement for a child to be enrolled.
How is the student selected to then be sent to you?
So the referrals for students can come from a variety of sources. A parent can ask that their child be enrolled in the program. A social worker could have an interaction with a student, or a student could approach a social worker at the school and say any manner of things, that there's a need, they need somebody to talk to, that there's a risk that they may become homeless, any number of things. In that case, we would reach out to the parent and seek consent. Sometimes a teacher may have a student, or a principal may be aware of a student, or we serve a great number of schools across a 4-county area, and we oftentimes enter a school when the principal says you can only do case management for up to 90 students, and they have a list ready to go of kids that they know are deeply in need of services and resources, or some kids have behavioral issues, anger management issues that manifest in the classroom, are withdrawn and are having a hard time engaging at school, or they want to see an increase in parental engagement. There are so many reasons why a child might be referred to a CIS social worker. And on the clinical side, they may be referred because they're exhibiting some sort of signs of having a mental health counseling need, a mental health concern. And in that case, it's an opportunity for a parent to enroll their child to receive clinical mental health counseling in the school setting where they already are for free, which if anybody's ever tried to seek out therapy services, there's a number of barriers that often present themselves, and all those barriers are removed by bringing that service directly into the school.
Okay, on page 107, item 6, you talk about a principal-created written campus plan. Can we have that campus plan?
Yes, we can get those for you. We don't have them tonight.
On page 107, number 14, it says that we are receiving a yearly report card on the CIS program. Does this report show us the observations and insight into the well-being and health of the school, and do we receive that?
So in March, Stacy Brown did the report, that overview, so that you could know what was being done. And during that report, it talked about the case managers on the 3 campuses had seen 247 students and had done 21 risk assessments or crisis interventions on the case management side. And the mental health counselor had given counseling services to 33 students and had done 12 risk assessments and 22 crisis services this year on our campuses.
Okay, can we be informed of what are the primary issues that we're seeing, not by person address, but like what kind of issues are we having?
I'm not positive that we could go do an overview, and we do have an overview, and those things were, a lot of the services for case managers that they're working on is growth mindset, emotional regulation, like being able to control their emotions when they're angry or frustrated. Some of it is grit and classroom effort. Some of it is sense of belonging, self-efficacy. Are they able to complete the things that they're asked to complete? Those are a lot of the case management broad overview things that they're having service hours for and having discussions about. Their self-management, about paying attention and remaining calm and staying focused and having a growth mindset. So those are the broad spectrum of things. They can probably provide us the number of students that were in sessions for each of those, but as far as like the counseling services, I'm not positive how much information is shared on that.
Have the issues changed over the years?
So I want to back up just a little bit, and one of the things that I wanted to discuss briefly, because it provides some context for your question, is that we are a partner of the Texas Education Agency. And so as such, and what I mean by that is the Texas legislature appropriates some funding for communities and schools programs in Texas administered to us through the Texas Education Agency. And as such, we are actually contracted to TEA. They set our targeted outcomes for kids. They set a minimum threshold of children that we are expected to serve, and they set our targets. And what I mean by that is we are accountable to TEA in very much the same way that school districts are for our performance. So we measure student outcomes in academics, behavior, and underneath the umbrella of behavior, you will find some of the items that you're talking about in terms of well-being, grit, self-efficacy, emotional regulation, and all of this. And attendance, we track graduation rates for our high school seniors and overall stay in school rate. So those are not metrics that we come up with internally. Those are actually given to us by TEA. And then how we measure in terms of, for example, a pre and a post questionnaire that a student might take where we can measure a score in terms of well-being, grit, and all of that. Those are surveys that have to be pre-approved by TEA before we can administer those. We have an internal database that we use to collect, again, with parental consent, the data that we are monitoring for showing progress in student outcomes across all those areas, academics, behavior, attendance, and such. And because we collect a lot of data, we are able to provide the types of breakdowns that you're asking for. So not only do we provide the outputs in terms of 247 students that were case managed by communities and schools this last school year, and 33 students received ongoing clinical support, but we provide an academic, behavior, and attendance outcomes breakdown for all of those students that are enrolled in our program. We can also break it down by the types of services, which I believe is what you're asking. So which of this, you heard mentioned a little bit a while ago about transportation, and you asked to have the needs changed. We have seen a huge amount of transportation needs. So for example, a lot of families that need car repair so that they have reliable transportation to get to work, to get their kids to school, to get their kids to the doctors. We have an internal family crisis fund that we can use if a parent needs rental assistance, utility assistance. They need that car repair. A vast majority of the family crisis fund that we directed this last year to families in Granbury was car repairs, amazingly enough. And so when we break that down and we look at all the districts we serve, it's very interesting to see what are the needs in this community versus that community, and where are we being asked to spend the resources.
Do you, some of those different things, but do you address, I guess is the way I'm going to ask this question, is like any incidents of an increase in the suicide ideation or child abuse, you address those kinds of things also? Yes, so that would be addressed on both sides, the case management and the clinical side. The clinical side, again, that's ongoing mental health counseling for students who need that deeper level of support for counseling, but all of our social workers are able to provide district-approved risk assessments, and we also track the number of risk assessments that we have conducted for students. So in a situation where a student is exhibiting signs that they are considering self-harm or harm to others, we would work closely with the campus personnel there to administer a risk assessment to that student. And then if they need to be referred to a service to provide them support, then we do that as well. It's good to get those reports, because if we understand what the problems are, then we are more capable of finding a good solution. On page 107, number 5, where does the mental health aspect fall in those 6 components, A through F? Where, you know what those are?
She doesn't have the same document, so it's supportive guidance. So the 6 components are supportive guidance and counseling, health and human services, academic support, enrichment activities, parent and family engagement, and career and college readiness.
The first one was supportive guidance and counseling, and it's counseling. And I can't say this enough, but parental engagement. I mean, none of this happens without being in partnership with the family. Yeah, that's one of my questions. Enrichment activities, what does that look like? So that could look like, without getting too wordy, we describe our services in 3 tiers. So a tier 1 service would be a service that's going to touch a lot of students on that campus, not just the ones that are enrolled in CIS case management or CIS mental health, and that could be an enrichment activity. So going back to a reference made earlier to a campus plan. So if our social worker on a campus begins their school year and they sit down with the principal and they say, Mr. or Mrs. Principal, what are your goals for this campus? What are some of the very specific needs that you see that you're trying to address? Maybe it is a need for more parent engagement. So a social worker might be asked to, hey, can you plan some parent engagement nights? Can you get some pizza donated? Can you, do a financial literacy night or any manner of things like that meant to bring families to the campus? It could also be a field trip that a social worker plans. We plan a lot of field trips. I know one of our social workers here, I can't remember exactly which campus it is, but has been phenomenal about setting up regular volunteer opportunities for her students to go to Ruth's Place. It's just a way that we partner with an organization in the community, and I think we all understand the value of students participating in volunteer service. So those would be examples of enrichment activities.
Okay, do you work with the Stars Academy at all? Like in correlation, or they don't?
I'm not familiar, I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's see. On your main CIS website, as it's been said before, it says you have a commitment to the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So I think that would be a reference to some wording, and I agree, I won't deny it, there's quite a bit of wording around that for our CIS national website. I think one of the things that's important is to draw the distinction between CIS, the national office, and CIS programs in the state of Texas. So you may or may not be aware that Communities in Schools, there are 27 affiliates in Texas, and we have our own C3, our own nonprofit that is CIS of Texas. We're all extremely mindful, I would say, and respectful of the communities that we work in. I would challenge you to find similar language on the Communities and Schools of Greater Tarrant County website, but all of that to say, our commitment to diversity and inclusion, I would say what that means to us locally is we are going to be open to serving students of all backgrounds, and you're not going to discriminate against a student because of where they come from, their needs, or what their background might be. We are here for all students.
Yeah, I understand that, but I also understand how the DEI kind of sneaks in there, and if the national is your parent company, then you have to be a little careful with that. During the last legislative session, Senator John Kemple said while discussing Senate Bill 17, there's virtually no evidence that DEI programs have closed the gap in terms of minority student outcomes. So I would certainly hope that of your own nonprofit, that you would definitely keep DEI out of this.
Well, I can address that by saying,
I had a question for you. Going back to what you said about surveys, correct me if I'm wrong, but to collect data, who is that data shared with? Who are all the people that the data is shared with?
So it is kept, the student responses are collected by Communities in Schools. Because it is a survey that is approved by the Texas Education Agency, scores are shared with TEA because the data that we collect from the students in our program is required to be shared with TEA. That's how they hold us accountable for performance. But those are the two parties, and TEA doesn't have individual responses. They only have overall scores.
So I'm to understand that it stops with TEA, then they don't go on to share that data with anyone else, it just stops there?
Correct. We don't use, I think I know kind of what you're referring to, but we don't send out surveys from any external platform. questions are input into our system, which is why I can safely say that they are sent out by CIS, collected by CIS.
One of the things on your
if they need mental health support for free. It is a state of Texas program, and so we desperately need those things in our schools right now for our students, and we need to relieve some of the burdens. Our licensed professional counselor is super busy with all of the different student needs in our district right now. And so they would be referred and get a parental consent just like all of the counseling services would. And then we could do that service again within our schools during a class that's not core content, reduce the amount of absences that our students have and get them the help that they need for free. And so that's just us providing the space and the telehealth option for students who need those services.
Do the parents get to sit in on those telehealth conferences?
It would be the counseling staff would have a space that they could see, but then it would be It would be private, and then, or the parent could come.
And again, we're talking about parental consent first. But I think,
Yeah.
the reason this is before you tonight is obviously, in the last 2 years, we have seen an increase. Our own counselors have told us this, and I don't think it's just a Granbury phenomenon. I think it's something that we're seeing nationally is mental health issues with kids and making sure that we have the appropriate responses in place. We have systems in place where kids can talk out issues and problems. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody in this community because Granbury ISD dealt with child trauma in the spring, self-inflicted trauma, and Cornerstone dealt with the same thing. And so being able to offer support services to parents, to children with parental consent and partnership is a good thing. And in a program like this, in an era where it's hard for us to find licensed professional counselors to come in and work because every school is clamoring for them, everybody wants them. This is just another tool in the toolbox for our counselors to help work with parents, work with kids, make sure that our kids' mental health needs are met.
It's the parents being involved in this that I'm most concerned about, and I think that if we take the data and then we realize what's going on, and I believe that bullying is a big issue with it, then we take that data and then we can help see what the problem is and then start fixing the problem to help the kids.
Yeah, and so I think the good thing about communities and schools and the good thing about this program is that it starts with us reaching out to the parent first and working in partnership
Absolutely.
with the parent.
Parents first.
Every time.
Are there other questions? Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that the board approve the MOU with Texas A&M University Health Science Center for the provision and administration of telehealth services associated with the Texas Child Health Access through telemedicine.
Thank you, Billy. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Courtney. And we have a motion and a second to approve the MOU between GISD and Texas A&M Health Science Center. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor, show of hands. Those against, show of hands. You'll let the record show that it's a 5-0 with Ms. Lowry and Ms. Graff again voting against. We will move to H.
Madam President, it wasn't so much that I have questions on this. I just wanted to give the shout outs for what our community has done to help Granbury ISD in this past month. Just in the past month, we've received donations from Schottenkirk Automotive to the GHS Junior Optimist Club for 16 scholarships, which totaled $4,000. American Legion Post 491 gave to GHS for Good Citizen Scholarships, $500. The Post also gave to GHS MJROTC $1,000 for scholarships. Lewis and Rhapsody Gigliotti gave $1,000 to Extended School Day to supplement families struggling with tuition. First National Bank gave Acton Elementary School $200 to help with transportation of the third grade class to Langdon Ranch. Buckholtz Ranch donated to the GHS expenses of $600. Ducks Unlimited gave GHS FFA Campus Activity Fund for fire pit projects, $850. GHS Volleyball Booster Club gave to the GHS Volleyball to supplement travel of $2,100. And Patriot Garage Door and Service gave to the Athletic Campus Fund to supplement the football camp $1,500. This month alone, our community has donated $11,750 for GISD. Thank you so much to the community.
I would remind you, if you have an opportunity to use any of those folks, or if you run into them, make sure you, as a member of this community, thank them for their support of the school. Do I have a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion, Ms. Townsend. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Townsend, a second by Ms. Lowry. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Let the record show 7-0. Now we will move to 10A, consider approval of benchmark education phonics program. Ms. Brown.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to introduce our early childhood coordinator. This is Belinda Linker, and she was the beginning point of our selection of a new phonics resource for students in grades kindergarten through third grade. So she specifically formed a committee of K-3 teachers to outline what they were looking for with regards to a phonics program, as well as consider the approved resources from TEA. They then took the approved resources, invited the vendors to come in and do a presentation of those approved resources, and then all kinder through third grade teachers were invited to view the presentations with the vendors and provide feedback. Based upon the feedback, they selected Benchmark Phonics for kindergarten through grade 3, and the program has been displayed for the last 30 days specific to community review. The community gets a chance to review any of the materials. A link was sent out to all of our staff, as well as posted on the GISD website, and so it has been posted and displayed for just now over 30 days. No comments were received from the public. So the specific selection is Benchmark Phonics for K-3, and it's recommended that the phonics adoption is approved by the board. Any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Brown? Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the benchmark educational phonics program.
A motion from Mr. Moore. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Wimberly. Any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, same sign. Let the record show 7-0. Thank you, ladies. Consider TEACH Early Childhood Texas Scholarship for Little Buccaneer employees. Ms. Rodriguez. Hello.
Thanks for having me. So I came to talk to you about the TEACH Early Childhood Scholarship Program. This is for child care employees. TEACH stands for Teach Education and Compensation Help. So the program, basically, it's just a scholarship model designed to retain early childhood professionals, helping increase their education, which in turn helps to increase the education provided to our children in child care. The eligibility criteria: employees have to have a high school diploma or a GED. They have to earn less than $20 an hour. They have to be employed in a licensed child care facility, and then they also have to work a minimum of 30 hours per week. Really just to provide child care employees to continue their education, to either get a CDA, which is a Child Development Associate, some kind of education or child care field, or a bachelor's degree in the same thing. This helps to retain employees. This helps for us just to provide more education and further their education and professional development, which comes back to our children in the child care facility. There's 3 different ways that we can utilize the TEACH TEACH scholarship model. Employees can get a CDA, which is kind of like that starting point. They take a certain amount of hours in child development training, And then they have to take an assessment and then be assessed themselves in the classroom to make sure that they're utilizing those skills that they've learned. Teach pays for the majority of this. They pay for the $403.75 of the assessment fee. We would be required to pay for $21.25 to sponsor that employee to get this. The completion award, the employee would receive their CDA, and then their commitment award is that we would Teach would offer them $250, we would offer them a $150 bonus or a 2% raise, and then they would have to remain employed with GISD for 6 months or agree to have to pay back what was paid into this. Just to give you an idea, like employees' minimum starting pay is $12 an hour, so a 2% pay increase would be 24 cents, which would be over the course of a year, $364.80. So not a huge amount that we would have to put into that. I do have one employee that is working on that right now who's trying to finish up their training. The other way that they can get this is through the associate's degree. The Teach Scholarship will pay for 90% of their school. We would agree to pay for 5%, and they would agree to pay for 5%. And you can see at the bottom, average annual tuition cost for an associate's degree is roughly $3,800. 5% of that is $190. We would provide them release time if needed, if they need to go to school or if they need to study. They would get either a $300 bonus or the 2% increase, which is only $190 if that's what we agreed to. They would agree to remain employed for up to 12 years, up to 12 months. 12 years would be fantastic, but 12 months. Or they could also pursue their bachelor's degree, and everything is pretty much the same on that. The commitment would be up to 18 months that they would have to stay. Bachelor's degree costs a little bit more, but 5% of that would be $622.50. That's all I have. Are there any questions?
Tiffany, I would like to just say thank you for finding this program, bringing it to us, something that the board has expressed support for and place value on is growing our own staff from within. And so this is certainly an opportunity to do that. It's our pleasure to recommend it tonight.
Great. Thank you.
Tiffany, how many employees do we have with you right now?
There are 14.
14? And how many of them do not have any of the 3 certifications we're talking about here?
I would say maybe half of them. They all have experience in child care, but probably half of them do not have some sort of degree.
It would be wonderful to have that much more education behind what they're doing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions from members of the board? Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Then I will entertain a motion to approve the TEACH Early Childhood Texas Scholarship.
Madam President, I move that we approve the Teach Early Childhood Texas Scholarship Program for Little Buccaneers employees.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion from Ms. Gore, a second from Ms. Graff. Any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, same sign. Let the record show 7-0. That motion is approved. We will go on to the next motion. Consider the 23-24 compensation plan.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, in front of you, you do have the 23-24 salary increase. Board Policy DEA local states the superintendent shall recommend an annual compensation plan for all district employees. As such, the budget to be approved at August 31st, 2023 will include that salary increase if approved tonight. The projected budget information has been provided to you so you can see how the effect on the budget would be with this particular raise. And included in this preliminary budget is a 3% increase to teacher salaries of $1,850, 3% midpoint increase to all other positions. This scenario also includes the increase in the salary stipend that was presented earlier. And in addition to all those salary increases above the district increase, All bus drivers are moved to a minimum of $18 an hour. Driver leads are moved to $19 an hour, and all pay schedules have been adjusted as presented to bring all pay grades above $15 an hour. You've also been provided a 5-year trend that shows the difference between preliminary values and certified values. And the reason that we bring it to you in June is that we have 226-day employee contracts that start on July 1. And if the increase is not approved prior to that contract starting, anything that is paid retroactively is not considered TRS eligible. So that's the reason we bring it to you at this time. So it is a recommendation of the administration that the board approve the salary increases for the 23-24 school year as presented by the superintendent prior to July 1st contract start date for 12-month employees.
Mr. Whitefield, I noticed that the projected total revenues this time is $89,746,438, and the total expenditures with this salary schedule is $89,746,438, which appears to be a balanced budget.
Currently it is. That's based on preliminary values.
Right.
And we did, for lack of a better word, squeeze some areas to get those raises at that point.
Thank you.
So we have, just to speak into this for a second, we have wrung our hands over this, watching the legislative session play out the last few months. Probably it's disheartening, to say the least, to see the state with a $33 billion surplus, and districts like Granbury didn't even see a small increase in the basic allotment. Likely there will be a special session. Certainly there's the opportunity for things to change. Specifically, when we get into reports tonight, we're going to talk about some other options that are locally within our own power to do more. Because I will tell you, the elephant in the room for us is, as we deal with the loss of staff, is that Granbury remains at least 10% behind our peers, and that number grows every year. When we sat down and had this conversation, we decided we would take care of our low-end employees first. We have people that are making $10 or $12 an hour. We feel like with 14% inflation hitting the country, we needed to make sure those individuals were taken care of first. So we're taking our minimum wage up to $15. That's what you heard Mr. Whitefield say, which is a pretty substantial cost considering we have 1,200 employees. And then beyond that, I think what burdens us is the 3% raise for everybody else, knowing that likely even with this legislative session not seeing an increase in the basic allotment, those districts that are 10% or more ahead of us will likely give at least a 3%, which is going to continue to keep us at a disadvantage in recruiting staff. And so later on tonight, during the informational reports, I'm going to talk about some opportunities that this board has locally to make a more concerted effort to take care of our teachers. You didn't mention ESSER. Are we going to bring that back later this summer, Mr. Whitefield?
Yes, sir, we will bring that later. It'll be a compensation revision for this year.
So, and I see Stacey Brown in the audience. Her department manages our federal grants. We do have a little bit of ESSER money left over, and so we're going to divide what money that is equally amongst our teachers too, and a retention stipend to thank those individuals who have stayed with Granbury ISD. But again, we've done that 3 times now over the last 3 years with our federal money, trying to take care of our staff. But that money will be exhausted at the end of this year. And so we've got to look at something more long-term to take care of our staff.
I don't know about any of the rest of you, but when we had such a large surplus at the state level in January, and they were talking about putting into tax relief for those taxpayers across the state and putting it into teachers' salaries, I thought, yes. Well, my letters to my legislators and my governor have not been too nice, because if they didn't intend to do that, they shouldn't have promised it in January. And so all of us got our hopes up that we would be able to do something really good for teachers this year, and they just popped that bubble bigger than life. But thank you for working hard to squeeze this into a balanced budget here and us to go ahead and approve those. You've heard Mr. Whitefield's presentation. Do I have a motion regarding the compensation plan?
Madam President, I have a little bit more discussion.
Yes.
I've been down to Austin 3 times during this legislative session, completely frustrated with the legislature for not putting up for our teachers, not only in Granbury, but statewide. It's a travesty. What I think is happening pay-wise, 14%, like Dr. Glenn said, for inflation. I would not vote down any increase, but we need to get more. And we'll keep working on this for our teachers to try and get them more pay. So with that, I move that we accept the salary increase as proposed by Emmett, and we'll keep working.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have a second from motion by Mr. Wimberly, a second by Ms. Lowry. Any further discussion? Nobody else wants to bash Austin. All in favor of this motion, show of hands. Opposed, same sign. Let the record show 7-0, it passes. Consider approval of bank depository bid under CSP 2023-07. Mr. Whitefield.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, in front of you, you do have the RFP for the depository for Granbury ISD. We issued a request for proposal using the standardized depository services RFP template for Texas Education Agency. We received 7 responses. After a thorough evaluation, 2 banks rose to the top as contenders based on the strong financial stability, extensive experience serving public school districts, comprehensive service offerings, competitive pricing, and advanced technology capabilities. It is recommended that Plains Capital Bank and First Financial Bank be presented to the board for their final selection, as both banks have demonstrated exceptional suitability to meet the district needs of Granbury ISD. It is recommended by administration that the board selects one of these banks based on their preference and suitability to meet the specific needs of Granbury ISD for a period of initial 2-year terms starting September 1st, 2023.
Mr. Whitefield, as I was going through these 2 proposals, and I would not ever try to present myself as a banker, so I'll let Mr. Moore address that, or Ms. Townsend, but it seemed to me that the First Financial proposal was a little more favorable to the district with regard to finances.
In the overall scheme of the things, of all the categories, they came out equally. It may have been a half a point difference in the evaluation. They both have competitive rates. They're both calculated a little differently on their interest rates, but everything else was equal.
Yeah, they're both going to fluctuate a little bit, but in the initial proposal, First Financial's rate was higher. First Financial has more locations across Granbury. First Financial was a GISD partner for a long period of time. In fact, we switched 2017, 2018 from First Financial to Plains Capital. So the district has a history with both banks.
We're
currently with Plains.
So how difficult is it? To switch it over?
It's time consuming. It's not that difficult.
In other words, it's doable.
It's doable, yes ma'am,
okay.
yes sir.
Not painstaking.
Not painstaking, no sir.
And again, what we would recommend, and I think is we go through it because it is going to be time consuming, but you have the opportunity to renew in 2-year increments up to 8 years. So if just like we made a switch from First Financial to Plains Capital, if the switch is made again, we would be asking for renewals so that we're not going through this every couple of years.
And just for the general public's information, we have like 20, 40 pages from each of these banks in their proposals to us. And so that's why I would defer to some of the bankers on the board.
I can give you a mortgage interest rate.
Talk to me right after the meeting.
Well, from what I'm looking at, I mean, they're both good banks, that we are not going to be wrong with either decision we make. But honestly, I see First Financial out in the community more. And I feel as every single month I read for you what the different entities in our community do for us, I think that that should play a part in it. And so my thought is toward First Financial.
Are you making that in form of a motion?
I will allow more discussion before that.
Board is open to discussion.
We have two choices. Why don't we just take a vote and see what comes up?
Okay, would you like to make that in the form of a motion?
I move that we vote, see who gets the award.
Probably pick one of them.
You have to pick one of them, make a motion to approve one of them.
My biggest concern was how much work, time, effort it was going to take to make the switch. I've done that before, and the company that I help manage is a fraction of the revenue that the school district does. And I know how much of a pain that was just for me, but that was me by myself. But that was my biggest concern. How much of an issue is it going to be to make that switch? For the payroll, the accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchasing, everything that goes into the school district and what we do on a daily basis. Is it going to mess things up really bad?
It's not going to mess things up.
Okay, it's just time consuming.
We have been through this practice before, and it is time consuming. The longest process is waiting for all checks to clear the last bank. So you're really managing two banks at once. That's the time consuming part. The initial switch is nothing.
Both banks manage school districts across the state of Texas and are financially very sound and have experience doing this. So,
How long does that usually take?
I want to say the last time we carried two bank accounts for 3 months, 3 to 4 months, to make sure all checks cleared.
Other discussion? Do I have a motion?
I figure out how to say it. Hold on just a second. Okay. Madam President, I move that we approve the bank depository bid under CSP 2023-07 to First Financial Bank.
Motion for First Financial. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. Lowry. Motion by Ms. Townsend, second by Ms. Lowry to approve First Financial. Any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, same sign. Oh, I saw your hand both times. I don't care. Let me clarify. Are you for or against? Okay, so let the record show on a vote of 5-2, that First Financial has been approved. Those opposing were Mr. Wimberly and Ms. Gore. All right, moving to approval of security film.
Thank you, Madam President. Last month, board Epic Solar Control was approved in the board meeting to a turnkey installation of $353,767 for the film on each instructional campus. When requested to provide payment of a performance bond, the vendor responded 3 weeks later stating they did not include the required insurance in their proposal. When asked for the additional 2%, they did not, we didn't want to give it to them, basically. That triggered a new set of events, so we put it back out to the other vendors. Well, all the school districts are getting awarded, and the bids came in lower. So you have in front of you NGS Films and Graphics with a 3M, it's a 3M best preferred reseller, with a Ultra 800 product, which is very similar to what was quoted before, for all instructional campuses at a reduction of $55,647.34 less than the original bidder. It is the recommendation of administration that the board approve the purchase of security window film and impact protection adhesive from NGS Films and Graphics through the TIPS contract for a total of $305,195.
And to clarify, this is money received from the Safety and Security Grant, and this is a required purchase of that grant.
Yes, this purchase is funded by a state of Texas grant, and this is one of the required steps that you must take before you can spend that money on anything else.
Yes, I have a question. As stated on page 204 and 206, the terms and conditions on the 3M, they don't make any guarantee to degree of performance on all windows because windows are constructed differently and may not guarantee it per the specs. Are we going to get an itemized list of the windows that at which school that did not meet? Because it'll be, and I say this because they have to be done a certain way in order for the film to work correctly. So are we going to know which windows did not get that correction?
We can have them provide that information to us, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. And one positive comment was, I did speak to a subject matter expert that we have working with the Lowry and Associates Security Consulting. He said the 3M was very good, so long as the installation is done correctly. It works just fine. A couple points with it. The bullets will go through it, and it is equally as difficult to break in as it is to break out. Otherwise, it's all
That is
good.
correct.
Any further discussion? Do I have a motion regarding the purchase of the security window film? Hello?
Madam President, I move to approve the purchase of security window film and impact protection adhesive from NGS Films and Graphics through the TIPS contract for a total of $305,195.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wimberly, a second by Mr. Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, same sign. Record shows 7-0. Nomination for board position for Region 11C. We got an offer from TASB. There is a board position open. Dr. Glenn, would you speak to that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. From time to time, the Region Service Center, TASB, will have seats open. They are committees for trustees to serve on. This particular committee is from the Texas Association of School Boards. It is our region, Region 11, Position C. The current incumbent has expressed his desire to run. I have not received an information packet on him yet, but now is the time for nominations, and later will be the opportunity to vote on positions. So if you or if there's another trustee you want to nominate for another district, now would be the time, and we'll get the application to them. They can get their name on the ballot, and then when the election comes, we'll cast our vote accordingly.
Any of you have an interest in yourself or someone else?
All right. If there's no interest, then no action is needed.
Then we'll move right to the reports.
This is more what Dr. H is going to be looking at, these pages. So I'm here to talk to you about the A through F refresh template. Just a minute. I had one up here. All right. TEA provided us a template to guide us, and we put our own information in. But they wanted to talk about how they are changing the A through F grading system and why. So why refresh the A through F grading system? Where do I point it? Do I have to? There you go. Okay. So according to state law,
we have to continuously improve student performance, eliminate achievement gaps, and prepare students for post-secondary success. That's what A through F measures. And in the spirit of fostering continuous improvement and growth, the state of Texas has made, as well as the federal targets, are going to increase systematically over the next 15 years in 5-year increments. And so that's the reason to refresh, to continuously up our goals that we're trying to reach for in the state of Texas for our students. As a district, we have a lot of measures other than STAR. Some of them are counted into our A through F, but we, along the way, measure a lot of our growth by our normed test to see how our students are progressing. We also look at our graduation rate, how many of our graduates attend college, a lot of the things that I go over on the TAPER report in January or thereabouts. Advanced classes taken and how much success they have on some of those AP exams, IBCs earned, and all of our students connected to our activities and our attendance rates, which has been one of our big goals. So over the last 5 years, there has been feedback from stakeholders on the current A through F and how it's working. And then in 2022, they started proposing some of the changes based on some of that feedback. And that went through some rounds this past year. And so in March of 2023 is when we started to see how we were going to be graded for 22-23. To help everyone look at the performances, they wanted to make sure that the cut scores for A through F remained unchanged since 2017. So what doesn't change is the cut scores, but the indicators have to continue to increase. And so the goals, the targets of how many students are meeting their expected growth and their expected performance is what increases. And 2023 is the year for the changes. So 22-23, this is the year. So they gave us a what if. And what that means is they took last year's ratings, last year's scores, and they put it into the new A through F calculation to show the difference, because there's different rules in this new A through F refresh. So it wants to show you the effect of the increasing of goals, how that would have on the A through F score for our district. Okay, so it's really important when I come back to you and talk about A through F scores, and when I come back to you to talk about the TAPER report, that you understand that it's not an apples to apples comparison from last year's scores in A through F and this year's scores in A through F. So I'm going to go through a couple of scenarios, but it is possible that someone who has an A rating from 2022 this year could have improved in student achievement, but they would receive a B rating based on the new calculations for A through F. So these are preliminary versions of the campus and district ratings. So that's not official until September, and I'll go over when the calendar of how that's going to work. The what if doesn't replace last year's ratings. Last year's ratings are what they are. It's just put in place so that you have a comparison from last year's scores to this year's scores with the new calculation, if that makes sense. So the final versions of our district ratings will be set in the fall when we get the 3 through 8 final scores, and in September they're going to post on texasschools.gov, and they'll do the what if rating from last year. They'll do the real rating from last year, the what if rating from last year with the new calculation from last year's scores, and then this year's scores with the new calculation. Yes. So let's look at what that's going to look like. That's kind of small, but hopefully you can see the one in front of you. I did a what-if rating for Mambrino Elementary. And so you can see domain 1, student achievement for elementary schools, there are no changes. And for middle schools, there are no changes. So for domain 1, student achievement is calculated the same. Student progress is going to always be what's better between domain 2A, academic growth, or domain 2B, relative performance. So the updates there are for elementary school, it's also going to say the same. But then when you look at domain 3, closing the gaps, it's going to decrease the minimum size for our student populations. So when you look at all of the disaggregated data for different student populations, such as white students, Hispanic students, EBs, special education students, we are graded on each one of those subpopulations. And so it used to be that the minimum size was 25. They've reduced that to 10. And then they moved from just a yes or no, did you meet the target or did you not, to a 0 through 4 to give you more differentiation in that score. And then it focuses on the student groups just in need. So they put it into 4 buckets. You get a yes-no score on all students. And then they take the racial groups and they pick the 2 lowest of those for you to focus on. And those are 2 of your buckets. And then the last bucket is your other special populations, such as EB and SPED students. And so that's how closing the gaps is changing as far as that target. And you can see for Mambrino, the scores from last year was scored at a 92 for closing the gaps. But the differentiation in the new calculation would reduce that score to an 85. And so overall, the score from Mambrino last year was a 91 and stays for 2022 as an A at 91. But if they do exactly the same as they did last year, this year their score would be an 89. Yes? So high school is a little bit more complicated because they're graded on a lot of different things. So if you look at domain 1 for student achievement, you can see that we have increased standards for CCMR and for graduation rates. So it's important for us to know that the same graduation rate, for example, whereas last year it counted as a 90% for Granbury High School, or 90 points, this year would be 10 points lower, right? So that pulls their score down, as does the increased goal for CCMR. So last year's score was an 85, and the same percentage of students earning their CCMR point and the same exact student population graduating would result in a 74 this year's calculation. For school progress, it's still going to be the highest of 2A or 2B. For 2A, to capture growth and including learning acceleration. So what that means is that any students that take Algebra 1 or an accelerated class in middle school are going to count, their growth score counts higher. And so or counts again, and so that's going to be in there. It captures their growth. And so that goes from a 73 last year to same exact numbers, a 69 this year. And relative performance, because of our CCMR goal being upped, that changes your relative performance. And so relative performance would have been an 80 last year, and the same amount of students compared to, in our comparison group, would be a 73. And then for closing the gaps for the same reasons that I talked about in the elementary schools, that's the difference between last year's 79 and this year's calculation using last year's numbers would have been a 69. So you can see that that would decrease the high school rating from an 83 to a 73 with the new target scores, upped goals, and calculations. So if you look at what if ratings for Granbury ISD, So the only thing important on this slide that you need to key in on is that top line. The district ratings are now calculated from a weighted average. So in the past, it would take the number of tests at a campus, and that would be the percentage that was calculated there. But now it's going to be on population of the school. So our new accountability this year is going to be encompassed in our Granbury High School scores, and 17.9% will be AMS and 14.8% will be GMS. So you can see that those populations of those schools, that's going to shift our what if score as well. So if we would have had our Granbury ISD done by weighted average of campus ratings, with everybody having the new A through F scoring on last year's scores, instead of an 82 last year, we would have had a what if score last year of 79. So the state of Texas says that the number of schools and the percentage of schools that have ratings that stay the same decrease and increase. You can see that. So I just wanted you to know from this, of our 10 campuses, 8 decreased in numeric rating and 2 stayed exactly the same. But as far as letter grades are concerned, only 3 decreased in letter grades, and that was GHS due to the CCMR and the graduation rate requirements and goals being set higher. Mambrino, and that was biggest for closing the gaps. That's why I used that as your example. And then Emma, and it's because Emma doesn't have any state testers on their campus, so they get the same score as the district. So they would have gone down in a letter grade, and 7 would have had the same letter grade. So this is preliminary. This is just so that you can know that it's very different. The increased rigor and the increased goal setting that the state is setting for this new refresh is not apples to apples from last year's score. So that's the only thing. You don't need to do anything with this information. It may not come back exactly in September how it is here, but this is just an informational so that you know what's happening. So here's the communications timeline and what happened. So we got the what if ratings on May 31st, the same time that we got our EOC performance levels. And I want to tell you, I want to brag a little bit on our high school. It's important that you know that all of our high school EOCs improved over last year. In all 5 tests, they had better this year on their scores than last year's scores. So that's something to be celebrated, and we need to congratulate our high school for a job well done. We won't have, you can see if you look down to August 11th, we won't have our STAR 3 through 8 performance levels until then. So we're anxiously awaiting that information. And then you can see at September 28th, that's when our A through F ratings will be released publicly on texasschool.gov. And you will see the last year's score, and then last year's what if score, if it was calculated like ours, is going to be this year, and then the new score. So that's what's going to be there. And this is what it'll look like. So you'll have last year's score, and then you'll have that explanation there, and then above it, you'll have the what if score so that you can compare it to this year's score. So you can see that our kids try to at least compare a little bit, the best that they can provide, that our students grew. Do you have any questions? Why? Continued improvement cycle at TEA.
And again, TEA, they did release a short video that I'll send you. It covers just reiterates a lot of the information that Ms. Clark just shared with you. I will say our curriculum department, Tammy Clark, they do a great job of when the data comes in, they disaggregate it quickly And so hopefully August 11th, by that afternoon when it comes in, we'll be able to give you a really, really good idea of how all of our campuses in our district perform. But where we're at tonight is that the rigor is up. The state continues to place a lot of emphasis on standardized testing, and so we continue to push hard to make sure that our kids are performing well.
Yes, and we're also at the high school improving in passing rate for every single EOC. We're also there already.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Discuss voter-approved tax rate election. Dr. Glenn.
Thank you, Madam President. So earlier tonight, you heard the compensation report from Mr. Whitefield, and I think that I told you we were pretty discouraged whenever the legislative session ended and we didn't see an increase in the basic allotment. A lot of time and energy was spent on what I know is a priority for the school board, and that's to make sure that our teachers are taken care of, that our teachers and staff are among the highest paid in the area. A question that I commonly get is, why we don't pay what Weatherford pays, or Cleburne pays, or Burleson pays, and so I did pull their tax rates. And total tax rate at Crowley is $1.44, the same for Burleson. Cleburne is $1.39, Weatherford's $1.22. Even here in the county, Toller's $1.22 and Lipan's $1.27. I bring that up because Granbury ISD sits at 99 cents. And this board and this community have done a great job of keeping our tax rate historically low, and I think that's something we can be proud of. But at the same time, I know that two priorities that are pressing for us is taking care of our teachers. And so if we're not going to see legislation that allows our teachers to be taken care of, then we need to look at all options that exist within this district. And it's not just about teacher pay or paraprofessional pay or staff pay. Certainly we're talking about that, but we're also talking about reducing student-teacher ratio, reducing class sizes, because we know that our kids learn best when they're in small groups, and having classes with 30, 35 kids is it's not good for the teacher in the classroom. It puts stress on that teacher. It makes the teacher want to get out and go to a smaller district or go somewhere else, and we know it's not good for kids in their learning. And so what can we do that could possibly generate funding? And so the law changed. Back pre-2019, they had what was called a tax ratification election. In 2019, the law changed, and now it's called a voter-approved tax rate election. And so I found, I actually didn't find it, during strategic planning, we had talked a little bit about the possibility of a VATRE, and just in pitching it to a couple of individuals who were in the room, they showed me this video from Pflugerville ISD, who this past November 22, actually successfully passed a voter-approved tax ratification election. And I like the video. It's about 3 minutes long, and I want to show the video quickly, and then I'm going to go through a PowerPoint that specifically addresses how it would affect Granbury ISD, because you'll notice from the video some of the numbers in Pflugerville and GISD are very different. Again, if you don't mind, Mr. Wilson, if you'd show this video real quick.
The Pflugerville Board of Trustees
Can we get the volume
called
up?
a voter approval tax ratification election,
And then restart.
or VATRE. Set for Tuesday, November 2nd. This short
Restart, please.
video will explain
I tell you what, you can skip that 11 seconds and just hit play.
what a TRE is and demonstrate its effect on Pflugerville ISD. The purpose of a tax ratification election is to ask the community to consider approving a tax rate to maximize state funding. If passed, the proposal would allow Pflugerville ISD to gain an estimated $7.1 million annually in funding, while also decreasing the total tax rate. How is that possible? The Pflugerville School District is funded primarily through local taxes and state funds. Local taxes are collected and go into two different funds. maintenance and operations, or M&O, and interest and sinking, or INS. The M&O fund pays for everyday district operations like salaries, books, and building maintenance, while the INS is similar to a mortgage and can only be used to pay the debt on school bonds. Bonds pay for new school construction and capital improvements. The Board of Trustees has set the total tax rate at $1.40.8, the lowest tax rate in PF-ISD in 21 years, 94.8 cents for M&O and 46 cents for INS. You will see the total tax rate of $1.40.8 on the ballot, down from the $1.42 total tax rate last year. Approving 2 pennies for the M&O side means more state funding for Pflugerville ISD. Meanwhile, the overall district tax rate has gone down. And as we said before, the district's proposed $1.40.8 tax rate will generate an estimated $3.3 million in additional state revenue annually and $3.8 million locally. More importantly, this new revenue is not subject to the recapture system of school finance, better known as Robin Hood. So what will the additional $7.1 million be used for? By increasing the M&O budget, Pflugerville ISD will be able to utilize these funds to balance its budget, sustain its current workforce, and fund any programs which will benefit Pflugerville ISD students. It's important to note that we are only talking about the Pflugerville ISD tax rate, which is different from a homeowner's overall tax bill. Although our local school district tax rate will decrease as a result of the election, an increase in property value will inevitably result in a higher homeowner's tax bill. Our Board of Trustees has called the tax ratification election, but the voters are the ones who decide the outcome of the election. All eligible registered voters are encouraged to become informed and exercise their right to vote in the election. Early voting begins Monday, October 18th and continues through Friday, October 29th. Election Day is Tuesday, November 2nd. Voting locations, times, and additional information can be found on our website.
That's good, Brent. Thank you. And if you'll pull up the PowerPoint. Lowest tax rate in 21 years was $1.40, and we're at 99 cents. So I think we're off to a good start. I'm going to jump right in. If you'll just kind of flip as I go through this. The 2 pots of money that we pull from in GISD is our maintenance operations tax rate and our interest and sinking tax rate. So specifically, when we're talking about the VATRE, we're talking about the M&O tax rate. Again, INS, that's debt tax rate, that's bonds. If you look at the historical rates, you'll notice that we were at $1.25 in 16-17. That was right off of the 2013 bond that was passed. We were still in the construction phase, or we had just finished the construction phase, and as values grow in the district, what you see happen is the tax rate goes down because there's more people paying into that tax base. So Granbury ISD, when we start talking about our tax rate in the tiers, specifically as we dive into the maintenance and operations tax rate, they have what we call Tier 1 and what they call Tier 2. So Tier 1 is the rate that is really set through a formula for the state of Texas. And so our current Tier 1 rate is 80.8046, so 80 cents. And that is compressed by the state of Texas in what we call an MCR, the maximum compressed tax rate. So the state of Texas says that's as low as you can go on your Tier 1 M&O tax rate. Now, Tier 2 is a little bit different. Tier 2 is what we're talking about with VATRE. Currently, we're at 5 cents. The board has the ability to go up those 5 cents. We call those golden pennies because they're not subject to recapture. So the state of Texas will allow a district to have up to 8 golden pennies. Golden pennies, again, are super important to us because they're not subject to recapture. Right now, we take advantage of 5 of those. We are going to pay back this year over $11 million in recapture. Next year, it'll jump to over $12 million in recapture. And there's nothing we can do about that. I get taxpayers all the time, and they're like, I write my check to the Hood County Central Appraisal District, and it says Granbury ISD on it. And that's all well and good, but the state of Texas is still going to require us to send them $11 million back this year. Beyond the golden pennies, all districts have the opportunity to get copper pennies. Copper pennies are subject to recapture. That's the big difference between golden pennies and copper pennies. So you have a Tier 1 tax rate, which is just your basic level of guaranteed funding, and then you have the Tier 2 M&O tax rate, which enriches or adds to your basic funding. So this next slide really encompasses what we're dealing with in Granbury. And when a district has a property tax revenue increase, like we have seen, we've always been a wealthy district, but we have seen our property taxes go up, and up over the last couple of years. The state funding decreases. And so you can see if you're not generating a lot of local taxes, the state will supplement you quite a bit more. We are that cup on the far right. And so we are spilling over to the tune of, again, $11.2 million this year and over $12 next year. And so what we're really talking about here with a VATRE is taking the maximum compressed tax rate, which we do believe, and again, there's a good chance that this legislative session is not over and things could change, but right now, by all indications, the state is going to require school districts in Texas to compress their tax rate once again. So the Tier 1 number will go down. It went down last year. It'll go down again this year. Tier 2, we have the 5 cents levied for their golden pennies, and then there's also the opportunity for voters to come back and say, we will add to the Tier 2 M&O tax rate. And then the INS right now is locked in at 14.5 cents, and unless there is a bond, it won't go up. Those three together make up our total tax rate of 99 cents. So we're at 80 cents on the MCR. We add the nickel for the Tier 2. We add the 14.5 cents on the INS, and that gets you the total tax rate at 99 cents, which is where we're at right now. And so we break down for you what golden pennies and copper pennies would do for the ISD. So 3 additional golden pennies would generate $3.7 million annually for GISD. And I say annually, but I'll get into another slide and talk about that in a second. The 9 copper pennies would generate an additional $4.4 million for the district. So we're talking about a combined $8.2 million if we were to maximize our Tier 2 funding. And so this is an interesting slide. So when you look at if the district had passed in November of 2022 the VATRE, similar to Pflugerville ISD, we would have netted $2.5 million from our golden pennies and $4.4 million from our copper pennies to a tune of $7.3 million. And if you'll slide over, you see, back up. If you'll slide over to next year's calculations based on appraised values in the community, you see that number increases to 8.2. So that's an increase year over year of $500,000. As Granbury continues to grow in value, those numbers continue to grow in value. That's how we continue to fund raises. That's how we continue to fund smaller class sizes. That's how we continue to fund staffing for new schools. And so you ask yourself, why would districts go after it? And just a few reasons include staff compensation. The majority of districts that are jumping out there, they're trying to take care of their staff. They recognize that under the current funding system, they're not willing to just continue to try and compete at a 3% raise every year. They want to take care of their staff and make sure they pay at a high level. They want to add new academic programs, new fine arts programs. They want to be able to supplement existing programs. For us, that would be like JROTC, fine arts and culinary, CTE. They want to make sure that their classrooms are well equipped and teachers, as we move to an era in testing where kids are having to use Chromebooks to take tests, we want to make sure they're doing that on good technology. and then finally safety and security. Even though we got a safety and security grant, being able to enrich our program and continue to provide safe schools, those are good dollars to be spent. So how many have done it since 2019? And the answer is simple: 73 have done it. 42 have been successful in that. So it's a 61% approval rate for communities. Ultimately, every community is responsible for what they want to do with it. But as we sit here today and we talk about options, what would it look like? What would $8.2 million look like for Granbury ISD? What it would look like is a 10% raise for our teachers and staff, a 10% raise. And that, when we had conversations early on, and I know Mr. Wimberly, as we left the last meeting, he made a comment, something to the effect of, don't be % raise for staff. I'd rather have nothing than 3%. And then I had my head down and got browbeat a little bit when I said it's 3% if we want a balanced budget. But that doesn't mean that our community can't look at this and say, you know what, GISD is a good investment. And we're not necessarily talking about raising the tax rate, because if the state decides to compress the tax rate, once again, we could just pull the pennies out of the compression. And that's what you saw Pflugerville ISD doing. They were saying, you know what, let's just leave it at 99 cents. I mean, everybody around us, even if they compress 10 cents, they're still in the $1.30s. We're at 99 cents. What if we just did not pass along the compression? We kept our tax rate at 99 cents, and we were able to give our staff the raise that we need to do to be competitive with the Weatherfords, Burlesons, Crowleys of the world, and to make sure that we could reduce class sizes. Two things we hear from our staff over and over and over again. And so to our staff, to you, I would say what that looks like is in August, and we're not asking for action tonight. We're wanting thoughtful dialogue. But in August, you as a board could approve two budgets. A budget that assumes that the VATRE fails, and one that allows voters to go out and cast a ballot seeing if they'll support the school. And if that budget were to pass, then the teachers would automatically get their 10% raise with back pay because you will have approved the budget that way.
So that would essentially allow the taxpayers to see exactly where, if they approve that tax rate, exactly how that money is being used.
You will approve two budgets in August.
Okay.
And if the TRE passes, the second budget will go into place immediately, and the teachers would receive that raise. And then the extra money could be used toward reducing class sizes. I know strategic planning is talking about a bond. That could be a 1 to 2 cent on top of this. So, I mean, there could be a lot of moving parts in this. But truly, these are the options we have. This is what we have in our toolkit. And I'm not saying we have to do it, but I do feel like it's my responsibility to present you with options. And what we're seeing since 2019 is every year more and more districts are saying we're going to do a VATRE to make sure that we can fund our schools appropriately. We're not going to wait on the state to do it. If they don't take action this legislative session, it'll be 2 more years before they convene and do it again. So I feel like my job is to give you the information, and then your job is to decide if you want to give people the opportunity to vote on that. But this plan right here, if we're talking about how we can pay our staff now, take care of our staff now, this is a plan that would allow that to happen. Election would have to be called on August 21st, along with our board election, and if strategic planning brings a bond forward, all three would have to be called simultaneously, which I think is worth taking into consideration.
Any questions? Hey.
We'll put this PowerPoint online. We'll have Lisa Oliver upload it with board notes so everybody can look at it. I will say we just tested our staff, ran a little survey out just to see what they thought. Would they get behind an election? And of course, it's going to be it allows them to get paid comparable to other districts, so you're going to see a lot of people supporting it. But the last number I heard, it was 103 yeses and 1 no. So I do think we are seeing a staff that is saying, hey, we recognize that we're underpaid and would like to see the board at least try and exhaust all options to make sure that we're paid competitively.
And I also wanted to point out, when our tax rate was compressed last year, it was actually compressed below the no new revenue rate. So when you don't bring in new revenue, it's kind of hard to give raises. But yeah, the no new revenue rate, just keeping it at that, we went even lower than that with our compression, and we're looking at possibly having that happen again. So I appreciate this option here, bringing this to us. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're getting about to the bottom of the world. Financial statements.
Thank you, Madam President. Board, in front of you, you do have the financial statements for the month ending May 31st, 2023. The statement includes only those transactions between September 1st, 2022 and May 31st, 2023. Revenue collected to date is 94.3% of the budgeted amount as compared to 94.49% in 21 and 22. And the expenditures to date are 71.69% of the budget compared to 63.88% in 21-22. I will draw your attention to, again, the transportation. The percentages look different on transportations because we have amended that budget to fit in the fuel increase costs, and same with the plant and maintenance. That's where utilities are. Utilities are looking at about 25% increase this year from last year. And over the past 2 years, we're looking at about 174% increase in fuel. So those are the major things to look at there. You can also look up in revenues under investment income, and you can see that our investment income this year is a lot better than it was last year. And that is your financial statements for the month, May 31st, 23. If y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those. Moving on to the investment and cash flow report, you can see that the month of May, we actually made $307,772 in interest because the interest rate that we are, our biggest interest rate is at Lone Star, and it's about 5.231 percentage points at this point, and that is considerably better than last year, bringing our total investment interest over all funds to $1.7 million this year. And that is your cash flow and investment report.
At this time, we're going to take a brief recess to allow our staff who have had a couple of hard weeks. If you'd like to go, the only thing left on our agenda is our open forum. And so anyone that would like to leave and the staff, feel free to do so. And we'll pause the meeting briefly to give you that opportunity. If no one takes it, we'll go right on. Okay. Mr. Daughtry, to speak about open forum and public comments.
Well, I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all again. In the last month, I've had an opportunity to be somewhat enlightened on the matter of culture as it relates to school board activities. And what I'm observing is a culture clash in Granbury ISD. The ideal culture would be that the schools belong to the people and that the board exists to serve. But the culture that I see present, as manifested by the board majority here, is that the board can do just about anything it wants to do so long as the public doesn't find out about it or doesn't complain about it. And a number of things have led me to that particular conclusion. And some of those go back a little over a year ago. You changed your standard operating procedure to try to limit dissent at the board table. You have attempted to intimidate the board minority through social media activities as well as from the diocese itself. You have reduced the amount of time in the open forum from 5 minutes down to 3 minutes. You have moved the bulk of the open forum, except for tonight, to the very end of this, and you can see the net results of what that does to the public interest in what's going on. But the thing that brought this back to my mind and led me to comment on this again is an event that took place last month, in which you had in your consent agenda an item to move the board date from June 19th to June 12th. And then you proceeded to take that out of the consent agenda and proceed with a discussion, at which point you decided not to keep faith with what you'd published in your agenda, but rather, instead of moving it to the 12th, you moved it to the 13th, playing hide and go seek with the board meeting. And that was done in order to accommodate a single individual on the board. And I think that is a terrible precedence to be set, and demonstrates once again that it's the public be damned and the board can do just whatever it wants to do. I would also like to point out to you that unless the culture of this board changes, then what Dr. Glenn has just presented to you is a hopeless cause. You'll never get the public to give you an approval with the culture that is presently manifested by the board majority. It's time to make a change, and y'all can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Daughtry. June Mearns.
Thank you, Madam President, Superintendent, and trustees. I thank you for all your tireless effort. It goes way beyond the board meeting and what we see. And I think all of us can agree, teachers need more money. I've heard that. I come from a teaching family. Those are the soldiers in the fields. They deserve every penny and more. And frankly, we can never pay them enough. But beside that, I was looking over community involvement. The word community. I grew up in a school where the community is involved. We heard tonight the community is involved to the tune of $11,700 from just organizations, and that was just this month. So we've got community that's working in Granbury. I left you alone a long time. I don't have kids in the school system. And a lot of people, in fact, the census says 90% of the homes in GISD do not have children in the school system. But yet you take our money and it funds us. And kids and their education are important. But what brought my attention were the books. And the sad part of it was, y'all seem to not be realizing that you had a book problem until somebody of the community discovered it, brought it to your attention. And instead of going, oh my goodness, we got to get a policy procedure, we got to get on this, fix this problem immediately, we attacked the people that were bringing the issue to it. And that troubled me. And I read a book to find out, is there a problem? It is a problem. You still have many books in there that you need to address. And that also brought me to the thing of going, if there's a problem with the books and they don't know about it, what else do they not know about? Well, somebody brought the attention of the airplane, and y'all reviewed it and decided that was not a good use of your funds and got rid of it. What else is a problem? So I started talking to people that were past staff, past students, past and current, and bullying is out of control in our school system. There are people that their children are bullied so much that they literally take them out of this school system and go to neighboring schools for the safety and well-being of their kids to get an education. Y'all got some things to take care of. Next thing I found out is there's a safety issue, and I'm glad that there's a bunch of things going on for this. There are bathrooms in the Granbury High School that girls do not feel safe to go to. They don't go. They go all around the campus to avoid them. You have a drug trafficking problem that is in this school. If kids and students and staff know about it, y'all need to know about it. If you do know about it and you're not doing anything about it, shame on you, you need to get out. If you don't know about it, get onto it and get this fixed. The other thing is the safety in the hallways, for them to be safe just to walk about. We want y'all to succeed. Let me just finish. We want y'all to be successful. We want the teachers to be successful. We want Granbury to be successful.
Thank you, Ms. Mearns.
And I will continue on. But thank you for what you do.
Kayla Asna. Kayla Asna, going once, going twice. Kayla Asna. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 8:23.
Thank you, Board.